The fluorescent lights in the school's administrative office buzzed like dying insects, casting a sickly yellow glow over the stack of papers threatening to topple from my desk. My fingers cramped around the pen as I filled out yet another form, the third one this week that had been misplaced by the perpetually overwhelmed secretary. The smell of old coffee and industrial cleaner clung to everything, mixing with the faint scent of children's sweat and cafeteria food wafting through the ventilation system. I should have been home 2 hours ago. My daughter, Emma, was probably curled up on Mrs. Chen's worn couch right now, watching cartoons with the volume too loud because our elderly neighbor's hearing wasn't what it used to be. The guilt sat heavy in my chest, a familiar weight I'd learned to carry alongside my exhaustion. Single motherhood had a way of making you intimate with both. "Miss Harper, we really need these by tomorrow morning," the secretary had said, not unkindly, but with the tired finality of someone who'd said the same thing 100 times before. Without the emergency contact information and the updated registration, Emma can't attend the field trip next week. So here I sat, alone in the dimly lit office, filling out forms that seemed designed to require information I didn't have. Medical history from a father who'd never bothered to meet his daughter. Contact numbers for relatives who'd stopped calling when they realized being supportive meant more than Facebook likes on birthday photos. References that made my small, solitary life feel even smaller. My hand trembled slightly as I reached the line that always made me pause. Father's name. For 3 years, I'd left it blank. For 3 years, I'd pretended that empty space didn't feel like an accusation every time I saw it. But this form was different. It explicitly stated that both parents' information was required for the school's database, some new policy about emergency contacts and legal guardianship that I didn't fully understand and was too tired to question. I thought of Marcus. Not the Marcus who'd disappeared the moment I'd told him I was pregnant, but the Marcus from before, charming, attentive, full of promises about the future we'd build together. Those memories felt like they belonged to someone else now. Some naive girl who'd believed that love could survive the reality of responsibility. The pen hovered over the line. My vision blurred slightly from staring at forms for too long, from the headache building behind my eyes, from the sheer exhaustion of trying to be everything Emma needed on a waitress's salary and borrowed time. Marcus DeLuca. I wrote his name without thinking. Muscle memory from 1,000 daydreams about what our life should have looked like, but my hand was shaking. My attention split between the form and the notification on my phone. A text from Mrs. Chen saying Emma had fallen asleep. Should she wake her? And I didn't notice the autocorrect. Didn't see how my phone's keyboard suggestion had changed the surname. Marcus Delano. The name sat there on the page, ink drying, final. I barely glanced at it as I moved to the next line, filling in a fictitious phone number because I had no idea how to reach the man who'd ghosted me the moment life got complicated. The address line got the apartment we'd shared briefly, the one he'd moved out of 3 weeks before Emma was born, leaving nothing but unpaid utility bills and a broken promise. I finished the form in a haze of exhaustion, gathered the papers into a manila envelope, and dropped it in the principal's inbox before my conscience could convince me to forge better lies. The hallway echoed with my footsteps as I left, the sound lonely and hollow in the empty building. The night air hit me like a wall when I pushed through the front doors, cold and sharp, carrying the promise of early autumn rain. I pulled my jacket tighter, a threadbare thing that had seen better years, and started the 6-block walk to Mrs. Chen's apartment. The bus would have been faster, but the last one had left 15 minutes ago, and I couldn't afford the cab fare. My neighborhood wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't safe either. The kind of place where you kept your head down and your keys between your fingers, where sirens were background noise and broken streetlights stayed broken for months. I'd learned to navigate it the way you learn anything through necessity, by paying attention and trusting your instincts. Which is why I noticed the car. It was parked across from the school, idling in a spot that had been empty when I'd arrived hours ago. Black, sleek, the kind of vehicle that didn't belong in this zip code. The windows were tinted dark enough to be illegal, and even from a distance, I could see the exhaust curling in the cool air, evidence that someone inside was waiting. Waiting for what? I didn't want to know. I kept walking, quickening my pace without making it obvious. That particular skill women learn early and never forget. The The street was mostly empty, a few cars passing, a couple arguing in Spanish outside the bodega on the corner. The usual soundtrack of city life at night. The sound of a car door opening made my heart stutter. Don't look back. Keep walking. You're imagining things, but I heard footsteps, deliberate and measured, echoing mine. Not running, not rushing, just following. The kind of following that was meant to be noticed. I broke into a jog, my bag banging against my hip, my breath coming faster. 2 more blocks to Mrs. Chen's, 2 more blocks to safety and locks, and... Miss Harper. The voice stopped me cold, not because it was loud or threatening, but because it was neither. Quiet, controlled, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Something European, refined, completely at odds with the neighborhood around us. I turned slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run. The man standing 10 feet away didn't look like he belonged in this world. His suit probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, without a single wrinkle despite the late hour. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and shadowed planes. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Dark, intense, with a weight to them that made me feel simultaneously seen and evaluated. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, both built like walls and dressed in similar dark suits, their posture radiating a kind of coiled readiness that made my mouth go dry. This wasn't a mugging. This was something worse. "I apologize for startling you," he said, and somehow his politeness was more terrifying than any threat could have been. He took a single step forward, and I noticed everything, the way his men shifted in response. The expensive watch catching the streetlight, the faint scent of cologne that reached me even across the distance, cedar and something darker, something that whispered of wealth and danger in equal measure. "I don't have any money," I managed, hating how my voice shook. Something flickered across his face. Not quite amusement, not quite surprise. "I'm not here to rob you. Then what do you want?" The question came out sharper than I'd intended, fear manifesting as anger the way it often did. He reached into his jacket, and both his men tensed, hands moving toward their own jackets in a synchronized movement that made my blood run cold. But what he pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a piece of paper, folded neatly, edges crisp and white in the dim light. "I believe," he said, his voice carrying that same dangerous quiet. "You made a mistake." He held out the paper, and even from where I stood, I recognized it. The school registration form, my handwriting. Emma's name at the top in my careful print. My heart stopped. "How did you—" The words died in my throat as he unfolded the paper, his movements precise and deliberate, and held it so I could see the line I'd filled out hours ago in that fluorescent-lit office. Father's name, Marcus Delano. "You see," he continued, and there was something in his tone now, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "When my name appears on a document claiming paternity of a child I've never met, I tend to want answers." The world tilted sideways. Marcus Delano, not DeLuca. Delano. I'd sent a school registration form to a man I'd never met, claiming he was my daughter's father, and somehow, impossibly, he'd received it, had tracked me down, was standing in front of me now with a look in his eyes that promised this was only the beginning of a nightmare I couldn't begin to understand. "It was a mistake," I whispered, the words barely audible over the roaring in my ears. "Autocorrect. I didn't mean... I don't even know who you are." His expression didn't change, but something dark passed behind his eyes, something that made every survival instinct I had start screaming. "No," he said softly, almost gently, and somehow that was worse than any anger could have been. "But you're going to." One of his men moved closer, cutting off my escape route, and I realized with crystalline clarity that running wouldn't save me. Nothing would save me. I'd made a mistake. A simple, thoughtless mistake born of exhaustion and autocorrect. And it was about to cost me everything. "Please," I heard myself say. "I have a daughter. She's waiting for me. This is just a misunderstanding." "A daughter," he repeated, and his gaze sharpened with an intensity that made me want to disappear. Yes. Emma Rose Harper, age 3, enrolled at Riverside Elementary, the daughter whose father I'm apparently supposed to be. He knew her name, her full name, her age, her school. The paper in his hand crinkled slightly as his grip tightened, the only sign of whatever emotion he was holding back. When he spoke again, his voice was silk over steel, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. "Get in the car, Miss Harper. We have a great deal to discuss." The interior of the car smelled like leather and money, real leather, the kind that probably came from somewhere I couldn't pronounce, buffed and conditioned until it gleamed even in the darkness. I sat rigid against the seat, my bag clutched in my lap like a shield, acutely aware of how out of place I was in this space. My jacket with its fraying cuffs, my scuffed shoes, the faint smell of French fry grease that clung to my uniform underneath, all of it screamed poverty in a vehicle that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. Marcus Delano sat across from me, separated by enough space to be respectful, but close enough that I could see the precise moment his expression shifted from controlled neutrality to something harder to read. One of his men drove, the partition between us and the front seat, raised to provide privacy I absolutely did not want. The other had remained outside, speaking rapidly into a phone in a language I didn't recognize. The car pulled away from the curb with a silence that felt expensive, gliding through potholes that would have rattled my bones in the bus. I watched my neighborhood slide past the tinted windows, each familiar landmark feeling farther away than it should. "Where are you taking me?" My voice sounded small in the hushed interior, nearly swallowed by the subtle classical music playing through hidden speakers. "Somewhere we can talk without interruption." He hadn't stopped watching me, those dark eyes tracking every nervous movement, every shallow breath. "You're not in danger, Miss Harper, despite what you might think. You forced me into a car." My hands tightened on my bag. "That feels pretty dangerous from where I'm sitting." Something that might have been approval flickered across his face. "Fair point. Consider it a strongly worded invitation, then." "To what? A kidnapping?" "To a conversation." He leaned back slightly, the movement making his suit jacket shift enough that I caught a glimpse of something beneath it. A leather strap, the unmistakable outline of a shoulder holster. My stomach dropped. One that couldn't happen on a street corner where anyone might overhear. The gun shouldn't have surprised me. Everything about him screamed danger, from the way he moved with that predatory grace, to how his men responded to the slightest gesture. But seeing evidence of it, knowing he was armed while I sat defenseless in his car, made everything feel horrifyingly real. "I told you it was a mistake," I said, forcing myself to meet his gaze, even though every instinct wanted to look away. The form, the name, I meant to write Marcus DeLuca, my ex, Emma's actual father. The autocorrect changed it, and I didn't notice because I was tired and distracted, and Marcus DeLuca. He repeated the name slowly, as if tasting each syllable. "And where is he now? This man who fathered your child? I don't know." "He left before she was born." The admission burned, shame heating my cheeks. "He wanted nothing to do with us." Silence filled the car, heavy and expectant. Outside, the neighborhood continued to change. Fewer pawn shops and check-cashing places, more boutiques with window displays and restaurants with cloth napkins. We were heading toward the part of the city I only saw when the bus route took me through on the way to my weekend house cleaning jobs. "So you decided to use my name instead." His tone gave nothing away, no anger, no amusement, just that same dangerous neutrality. "No, I told you, it was auto-correct, a mistake. A stupid, meaningless mistake that I would fix immediately if you'd just let me." "Nothing involving my name is meaningless, Miss Harper." The words came out soft, almost gentle, but underneath them was steel. "My name on a document creates complications, legal implications, questions from people who have no business asking questions about my personal life." The way he said it made something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't just about a wrongly filled form. This was about something bigger, something I'd stumbled into without understanding the rules. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't know. I don't even know who you are." His head tilted slightly, studying me with an intensity that made me feel stripped bare. "You genuinely don't, do you?" Should I? A pause, long enough that I heard the whisper of tires on pavement, the distant sound of a siren. Then, perhaps it's better that you don't. The car turned onto a tree-lined street where the buildings looked like converted mansions, all stone facades and wrought iron gates. My confusion must have shown on my face, because he leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees in a posture that seemed almost casual, if not for the coiled tension I could sense beneath it. "Tell me about Marcus DeLuca," he said. "Everything." "Why? What does it matter?" "Humor me." There was no arguing with that tone. I swallowed hard, trying to organize 3 years of pain and disappointment into something coherent. We met at the restaurant where I worked. He was charming, attentive, said all the right things. The memories tasted bitter now. We moved in together after 4 months. I got pregnant 6 months after that. He promised he'd be there, that we'd figure it out together, but he wasn't. He disappeared 3 weeks before my due date. Cleaned out his half of the apartment while I was at work. Changed his number. Just gone. My throat tightened. I tried to find him, to tell him when Emma was born, but it was like he'd never existed. No social media, no forwarding address, no mutual friends who'd admit to knowing where he went. Marcus Delano's expression darkened, something dangerous moving behind his eyes. "Describe him." "What?" "His appearance. Height, build, distinguishing features." The clinical nature of the request threw me, but I answered anyway. Tall, maybe 6'1", athletic build, dark hair, brown eyes. He had a scar on his left hand, said it was from a kitchen accident when he was younger. He worked in construction, or at least that's what he told me. "Why does—" "His last name." He cut me off, voice sharp now. "You're certain it was DeLuca? DeLuca? "Yes. I saw his driver's license once when we were opening a joint bank account. A bank account he'd drained before disappearing. Marcus Anthony DeLuca, I'm sure." He pulled out his phone, one of several I noticed in his jacket pockets, and typed rapidly, his jaw tight. The classical music continued its serene melody, completely at odds with the tension filling the car. After a moment, he turned the screen toward me. "Is this him?" The photo showed a man who looked vaguely like Marcus, same height, similar build. But the face was wrong. Harder, meaner, with eyes that held none of the warmth I remembered. "No, that's not him." Another photo. Closer, but still wrong. "No." 3 more photos, all of men who could have been cousins or brothers, but weren't the man who'd left me. Marcus Delano's expression grew darker with each rejection, his fingers moving across the screen with increasing urgency. Then he showed me another picture, and the world stopped. It was Marcus. My Marcus. But he looked different. Thinner, his hair cut shorter, wearing clothes I'd never seen him in, and he wasn't alone. The photo showed him standing beside a car, laughing at something off camera, completely at ease in a way that made my chest ache with memories of the man I'd loved. "That's him," I breathed. "Where did you get this? When was it taken?" Marcus Delano's face could have been carved from ice. 2 months ago, in Chicago. 2 months ago, Marcus had been alive and well in Chicago, living his life while I struggled to pay for Emma's daycare and shoes that fit her growing feet. The rage that surged through me was hot and immediate, burning away 3 years of wondering if something terrible had happened to him. "What was his real name?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer from the way Marcus Delano's expression had shuddered. "Marco DeLuca, my head of security's younger brother." He said it quietly, each word deliberate. "Who stole $200,000 from one of my businesses and disappeared before we could recover it." The car seemed to shrink around me. "Your security's brother." "Yes." "You're saying Marco, he worked for you?" In a manner of speaking. His gaze never left my face, cataloging every reaction. The money he stole was meant for a real estate investment. When it went missing, so did he. We've been looking for him ever since. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the man I'd known with the thief he was describing. The apartment we'd shared hadn't been fancy, but it had been nicer than anything I could afford alone. The dinners out, the small gifts. Had all of it been purchased with stolen money? I don't know where he is, I said quickly. I swear, I haven't heard from him in 3 years. If I knew, I would have... I believe you. The interruption was gentle, but firm. If you'd known who he really was, what he'd done, you wouldn't have written his name on that form in the first place. The car pulled to a stop in front of a building that looked more like a fortress than a residence, all stone and steel and windows that reflected the city lights like armor. A doorman appeared immediately, opening the car door with a practiced efficiency that spoke of years of service. Come, Marcus Delano said, stepping out with a fluid grace that made me feel clumsy by comparison. We have more to discuss, and I'd prefer to do it somewhere more comfortable. I need to get Emma, I protested, even as his hand appeared in my line of vision, offering assistance I didn't want to accept but couldn't refuse. His palm was warm, his grip firm, but not painful as he helped me out of the car. She's waiting at my neighbor's house, and Mrs. Chen is elderly. She can't... Your neighbor is being compensated for her time, and a security detail has been placed outside her apartment to ensure both their safety. He said it matter-of-factly, as if arranging surveillance on civilians was perfectly normal. Emma is safe. You have my word. The casualness with which he'd invaded my life, my daughter's life, should have terrified me. And it did. But underneath the fear was something else. A creeping realization that Marcus Delano operated on a level where normal rules didn't apply, where a miswritten name could trigger an investigation that extended to protection details and background checks within hours. Who are you? I asked again, but this time the question held different weight. He paused at the building's entrance, backlit by the warm glow of the lobby, and for the first time since I'd met him, something almost like a smile touched his lips. Someone you should have been more careful about naming as your daughter's father, he said. Even by accident. Word count, 2051. Should I proceed with Block 3, OK3, 22 PM Block 3? His penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building, accessed by a private elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint scan. I watched him place his thumb against the reader, the blue light scanning once before the doors slid open with a whisper of expensive engineering. The elevator itself was larger than my bathroom, all mirrors and dark wood paneling that reflected my pale, terrified face back at me from multiple angles. I looked like exactly what I was. A waitress who'd stumbled into something far beyond her understanding, wearing yesterday's mascara and 3-year-old doubts like armor that wouldn't protect me from anything. You're shaking, Marcus observed, his voice cutting through the subtle classical music that followed us even here. You kidnapped me and put surveillance on my daughter. My words came out sharper than intended, fear manifesting as defiance. Forgive me for not being comfortable. The surveillance is for her protection, not imprisonment. The elevator began its ascent, smooth and silent. Marco De Luca stole from me, Miss Harper. When thieves run, they often return for unfinished business. If he knows you filed paperwork with a name resembling mine, he might assume you've made contact with me. That makes you and Emma potential targets. The logic was sound, which somehow made it worse. You're saying he might come after us? I'm saying I don't take chances with loose ends. His reflection in the mirrored walls showed a man completely at ease, while mine showed a woman coming apart at the seams. And whether you intended it or not, you became part of this the moment you wrote my name on that form. The elevator opened directly into his apartment. No hallway, no buffer between public and private space, just immediate immersion into a world of wealth I'd only seen in magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the lights sprawling out like scattered diamonds against black velvet. The furniture looked simultaneously modern and timeless, all clean lines and expensive fabrics. Original artwork hung on walls the color of smoke, pieces I recognized vaguely from museum visits with Emma. Everything was perfect and cold, like a showroom where no one actually lived. Please sit. He gestured toward a seating area near the windows, where leather couches the color of charcoal faced each other across a glass coffee table. Can I offer you something? Water, coffee, wine? Answers. I remained standing, my bag still clutched against my chest. You said we needed to talk, so talk. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. He shrugged off his jacket with practiced ease, revealing the shoulder holster I'd glimpsed earlier. The gun nestled against his ribs, looked deadly and familiar. Like he wore it as unconsciously as other men wore watches. He draped the jacket over a chair but didn't remove the weapon. That felt significant somehow, though I couldn't say why. 3 years ago, Marco DeLuca accessed funds meant for a property acquisition in the Bronx. He moved to a bar cart, pouring amber liquid into a crystal tumbler with the ease of ritual. The money was transferred through several accounts before disappearing entirely. By the time we traced the theft to him, he'd vanished. No credit card use, no phone activity, no known associates willing to admit contact. You think he was with me during that time? The pieces were assembling themselves into a picture I didn't want to see. The timeline aligns. He disappeared in late August. When did you meet him? September. The word tasted like ashes. Early September. He said he'd just moved to the city for work. Marcus took a slow sip of his drink, his gaze never leaving me. And when did he leave you? April. 3 weeks before Emma was born. I sank onto the couch without meaning to. My legs suddenly unable to hold me. He used me. The whole thing, the relationship, moving in together, all of it. He was just hiding. Yes. The confirmation shouldn't have hurt after 3 years, but it did. It carved out something inside me that I'd been protecting. Some small hope that what we'd had was real even if it hadn't lasted. Now even that was gone, revealed as fiction. I'm sorry. And Marcus Delano sounded like he meant it, which was somehow worse than indifference would have been. For what it's worth, I don't believe he planned the pregnancy. That was likely a complication he hadn't anticipated. A complication. My daughter, my whole world, reduced to an inconvenient accident in a criminal's escape plan. Why are you telling me this? I looked up at him. This dangerous man in his perfect penthouse with his perfect life, trying to understand what he wanted from me. If you're looking for Marco, I can't help you. I don't know where he is. I don't know anything. I know. He set down his drink and moved closer, settling into the couch across from me with a grace that seemed choreographed. But there's another matter we need to address. Dread pooled in my stomach. What matter? The form you filed lists me as Emma's father. By tomorrow morning, that information will be in the school's database. It will be copied to their insurance provider, their emergency contact system, possibly even local authorities depending on their protocols. His fingers steepled beneath his chin, a gesture that seemed unconsciously threatening. My lawyers can have it corrected, of course. But that draws attention. Questions about why it was wrong in the first place. Investigations into clerical errors. People looking into my personal life in ways I can't allow. So what do you want me to do? My voice cracked. I'll tell them it was a mistake, that I filled it out wrong, and create exactly the attention we're trying to avoid. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the intensity of his focus made me feel like the only thing in his world. There's a simpler solution, one that protects both of us. I waited, hardly breathing for him to continue. Leave it. What? Leave the form as is. Let the school believe I'm Emma's father. He said it calmly, as if proposing something reasonable rather than insane. It provides you and Emma with protection. No one would dare threaten the family of Marcus Delano. It provides me with cover. A previously unknown daughter explains any unusual behavior, any increased security measures around someone in my life. You can't be serious. I stood abruptly, needing distance, needing space to process what he was suggesting. You want me to lie about my daughter's paternity? To let everyone think you're her father when you're a complete stranger? I want to solve a problem efficiently. He remained seated, perfectly still, watching me pace like a caged animal. You need protection whether you realize it or not. I need discretion. This arrangement provides both. This arrangement is crazy. My voice rose despite myself. You can't just decide to pretend to be someone's father because it's convenient. I can do whatever I choose, Miss Harper. And there it was. The steel beneath the silk, the reminder of exactly who I was dealing with. The question is whether you're wise enough to accept help when it's offered. I stopped at the windows, pressing my palms against the cold glass, staring out at the city that suddenly felt impossibly large and dangerous. Somewhere down there, Marco was possibly planning his next move. Somewhere down there, Emma was sleeping, innocent and unaware that her mother had accidentally entangled them both with a man who carried guns and spoke about protection details like normal people discussed weather. "I don't understand any of this," I whispered. "Yesterday I was just trying to pay rent and keep Emma fed. Now I'm standing in a penthouse talking to a man I don't know about, pretending he's my daughter's father to protect us from my ex-boyfriend who's apparently a thief. This isn't real. This can't be real. And yet it is." His reflection appeared in the glass beside mine, close enough that I could see every detail of his face in the darkened window. When had he moved? I hadn't heard him approach. "I understand this is overwhelming, but I'm offering you a choice, Claire." The use of my first name startled me. He'd called me Miss Harper until now, maintaining distance, formality. This felt different, more personal, more dangerous. "What choice?" I asked, still watching his reflection rather than turning to face him. "Accept my protection. Let me ensure Emma's safety while we locate Marco and recover what he stole. In exchange, you maintain the fiction that I'm her father, at the school, in public, anywhere questions might arise." His voice was low, measured, hypnotic in its certainty. "Or refuse, correct the paperwork, and hope Marco doesn't see you as a liability when he inevitably resurfaces. That's not a choice. That's a threat. It's reality." His hand appeared in my peripheral vision, resting against the glass near mine, not touching but close enough that I could feel the heat of him. "I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm trying to protect you. There's a difference." I turned finally, and found him closer than I'd expected. Close enough to see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the exact shade of darkness in his eyes, the way a small scar cut through his left eyebrow. Details that made him human rather than the dangerous stranger he'd been in my mind. "Why?" The question came out barely above a whisper. "Why would you do this? You don't know me. You don't know Emma. We're nothing to you." Something shifted in his expression. Something I couldn't name but felt in the air between us. "You're not nothing. We're strangers. Not anymore." His gaze dropped to my lips briefly before returning to my eyes, and heat flooded through me that had nothing to do with fear. "The moment you wrote my name on that form, you stopped being a stranger, Claire. You became a responsibility, and I take my responsibilities very seriously." The way he said my name made something tighten in my chest. This was wrong. All of it. I shouldn't be standing here, shouldn't be considering his insane proposal, shouldn't be noticing the way his presence seemed to fill the space around us until nothing else existed. "I need to think," I managed. "This is too much, too fast. I can't." "You have until morning." He stepped back, giving me space I simultaneously wanted and resented. "The school will process the paperwork when they open. Once it's in their system, changing it becomes complicated. So decide, Claire. Protection or exposure, safety or risk." My phone buzzed in my bag, Mrs. Chen probably wondering where I was. The normalcy of it felt surreal against the backdrop of this conversation, this penthouse, this man who was offering to upend my entire life with the same casualness most people showed ordering coffee. "I want to see Emma," I said. "I need to see her, make sure she's okay." "Of course." He pulled out one of his phones, typed a brief message. "My driver will take you home. The security detail will remain in place overnight. Discreetly, you won't see them. In the morning, call the number I'm about to give you with your decision." He handed me a business card, plain white with just a phone number embossed in black. No name, no title. Nothing to indicate who he was or what he did. Just 10 digits that represented a choice I wasn't ready to make. And if I say no, I had to ask. Had to know. Marcus Delano smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. "Then I'll wish you luck, Miss Harper. You'll need it." The apartment felt different when I finally stumbled through the door at nearly midnight. Smaller somehow. Shabbier. The peeling linoleum in the kitchen caught my eye in a way it never had before, and the water stain on the ceiling seemed to have grown since this morning. Or maybe I'd just spent too long in a penthouse where everything was perfect, where money solved problems before they became visible. Emma was asleep in her bed, her small body curled around the stuffed rabbit she'd had since birth. Mrs. Chen had left a note on the counter. She ate all her dinner and brushed her teeth. Such a good girl. The nice men outside said you'd be home soon. Written in her careful, shaky handwriting. The nice men outside. Marcus Delano's security detail. Watching my building, watching my daughter, making sure we were safe from a threat I hadn't known existed until a few hours ago. I checked the locks twice, then a third time, before finally allowing myself to breathe. The business card burned in my pocket like a brand. 10 simple digits that represented an impossible choice. Sleep didn't come. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, watching car lights sweep across the water stain, and trying to make sense of a world that had tilted sideways. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus Delano's face, the intensity of his gaze, the controlled power in every movement, the way he'd stood so close at the window that I'd felt the heat of him through my clothes. "You're not nothing." The words echoed in the darkness, twisting something inside me that I didn't want to examine too closely. He was dangerous. He carried a gun, commanded men who followed his orders without question, lived in a world where stolen money and surveillance were Tuesday afternoons. Getting involved with him, even in this strange, practical arrangement he'd proposed, was asking for trouble. But the alternative was worse. Marco, somewhere out there, possibly watching, possibly planning. Emma, vulnerable and innocent, caught in the crossfire of adult mistakes and criminal enterprise, protection or exposure. Safety or risk. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Morning came too quickly, sunlight streaming through thin curtains that did nothing to block the noise of the city waking up. Emma bounced on my bed at 6:30, chattering about a dream she'd had involving talking dinosaurs and ice cream mountains, blissfully unaware that her mother had spent the night contemplating deals with dangerous men. I made her breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, her favorite, and watched her eat with the intensity of someone memorizing details. The gap in her smile where a tooth had fallen out last week. The cowlick at her crown that never laid flat no matter how much I brushed. The way she hummed while she chewed, completely unself-conscious and perfectly herself. What kind of mother was I, considering tying her life to a stranger's? What kind of mother was I, knowing the alternative might put her in danger? The business card sat on the counter, mocking me with its simplicity. I picked it up 3 times before Emma left for the bathroom, turning it over in my fingers, feeling the expensive cardstock, the embossed numbers that probably cost more to print than my entire wallet contained. I dialed before I could change my mind. He answered on the first ring. "Good morning, Claire." No greeting, no preamble. Just my name in that accent that made it sound like something rare and valuable. I hated how my stomach flipped at the sound. "I have conditions," I said, skipping past pleasantries I didn't have energy for. A pause. Then, "I'm listening. Emma never finds out the truth. As far as she knows, you're just someone helping us. A friend. She's too young to understand complicated lies, and I won't confuse her." Agreed. "You don't make decisions about her without consulting me. Doctor's appointments, school stuff, anything. I'm still her mother. That doesn't change." "Of course. And when this is over, when you find Marco and get your money back, you disappear from our lives. Cleanly. No mess, no drama. We go back to normal." Silence on the other end, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, "Is that what you want? To go back to normal?" The question caught me off guard. What else would I want? Safety, security, a life where you don't work 60-hour weeks and still struggle to pay rent. His voice was soft, persuasive, dangerous. "I can provide those things, Claire. Not just temporarily, permanently. I'm not for sale." The words came out harder than intended, years of scraping by with my dignity intact making me defensive. "I'm not trying to buy you." A hint of something, amusement, frustration, colored his tone. "I'm offering you a partnership. One that benefits us both by pretending you're Emma's father, by ensuring her safety and your peace of mind." A beat. "Do you accept my terms?" I looked at Emma, who'd returned from the bathroom and was now arranging her stuffed animals into some elaborate tableau on the living room floor, narrating their adventures in the serious voice she used when playing. So innocent, so trusting, so completely dependent on me to keep her safe. "Yes," I whispered. "I accept. Good." Satisfaction threaded through the word. "A car will pick you up at 9. We need to be seen together publicly. Establish the narrative before questions arise. Dress casually. We're going to the park." "The park?" "Emma likes parks, doesn't she? The one near her school? With the blue slides?" He said it like he'd memorized details about my daughter's life, and maybe he had. The thought should have disturbed me more than it did. "How do you—" "9 o'clock, Claire. Don't be late." He hung up before I could protest, leaving me holding a silent phone and 1,000 questions I'd never gotten to ask. The black car arrived precisely at 9, idling at the curb with the same expensive silence as last night. But this time, when the door opened, Marcus Delano stepped out himself, no longer in a suit, but in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. He looked different in daylight, younger somehow, though still carrying that aura of controlled danger that seemed fundamental to who he was. Emma stopped mid-sentence when she saw him, her usual chatter dying as she stared at the stranger approaching our building with the wariness children have around new people. "It's okay, baby," I said, taking her hand. "This is a friend. Mr. Delano. He's going to spend the day with us." "Marcus," he corrected, crouching down to Emma's level with a grace that surprised me. This close, I could see his eyes weren't purely dark. There were flecks of amber near the pupils, warm against the coffee-colored irises. "It's very nice to meet you, Emma." She studied him with the seriousness of a 3-year-old evaluating trustworthiness, then apparently found him acceptable because she smiled, showing off her gap-toothed grin. "We're going to the park. I heard. I've been told the blue slides are the best ones." He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. The sight of my daughter's small hand in his larger one did something strange to my chest. This was wrong. Letting a stranger into our lives, into her trust, all based on a mistake and a deal made in desperation. But watching him help her into the car seat he'd apparently had installed overnight, listening to him answer her endless questions about the car's features with patient detail, I couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus Delano was dangerous in more ways than I'd anticipated. The park was busier than usual for a Thursday morning, filled with nannies and stay-at-home parents and retirees feeding pigeons. We found a bench near the playground, close enough to watch Emma climb on the equipment, but far enough to talk without being overheard. "Your security team is here," I said, spotting the 2 men positioned at strategic points around the park. They tried to blend in, but their posture gave them away. Too alert, too watchful, scanning the area with professional efficiency. Always. Marcus sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "You'll get used to them, will I?" I watched Emma race toward the slides, her laughter carrying on the morning air. This whole thing still feels surreal. Yesterday I was invisible. Today I'm apparently dating a man who needs bodyguards at the park. Not dating. His hand found mine on the bench, warm and solid, and my breath caught at the contact. That would be moving too fast, even for appearances. For now, you're a woman I'm interested in. Someone I'm getting to know. Someone whose daughter I'm taking time to spend with. The careful construction of our fake relationship should have felt clinical, but the way his thumb traced slow circles on my palm made it feel anything but. "And later?" "Later we're a couple." He said it simply, inevitably, like he'd already mapped out our future in his mind. Emma's biological father isn't in the picture. I've stepped up to fill that role. Eventually, if asked, I adopted her. The timeline is vague enough to discourage questions. "You've thought this through." "I think everything through, Claire." His gaze fixed on Emma, watching her interact with other children at the top of the slide. "It's how I've survived this long." There was weight to those words, history I didn't understand but could feel in the air between us. Before I could ask, Emma came running back, breathless and excited, demanding that Marcus come see how high she could climb, and he went. This dangerous man with his guns and his security detail and his penthouse overlooking the city. He spent the next hour helping my daughter across monkey bars and catching her at the bottom of slides and listening with apparent genuine interest to her rambling stories about preschool drama. The other parents watched us with barely concealed curiosity. A few whispered behind hands, and I caught snatches of conversation. Is that Marcus Delano, and didn't know he had a daughter and she must be the mother? That made my skin crawl with the weight of our deception. But Emma was happy, happier than I'd seen her in months, maybe years. She had a man's attention, his time, his focus in a way her real father had never provided. And watching Marcus kneel in the sand to help her build a castle, his expensive clothes getting dirty without complaint, something inside me cracked. This wasn't supposed to feel good. It wasn't supposed to feel real, but it did. Claire. His voice pulled me from dangerous thoughts. He'd left Emma with another little girl, both of them collaborating on their sand architecture, and returned to the bench where I sat watching. You're thinking too much. I'm thinking exactly enough. I met his eyes, trying to read the man behind them. Who are you really? Not the version you're showing Emma, not the dangerous version from last night. Who is Marcus Delano when no one's performing? He considered me for a long moment, and I could see him weighing answers, choosing what to reveal. Someone who learned young that power is the only real protection in this world. Someone who's built an empire on that understanding. Someone who doesn't let people in easily. But when I do... He paused, his gaze intense. I protect what's mine. We're not yours. Aren't you? His hand cupped my cheek, the gesture so sudden and intimate that I forgot to breathe. You called me this morning. You accepted my terms. You let me into your daughter's life. At what point, Claire, do you stop pretending this is temporary? Before I could answer, before I could process what he was implying, Emma called for us, wanting both of us to see her completed castle. Marcus dropped his hand and stood, offering me assistance I didn't take, and we walked together toward my daughter like the family we were pretending to be, like the family that terrifyingly was starting to feel real. Block 5. 3 weeks passed in a blur of carefully constructed normalcy that felt anything but normal. Marcus became a fixture in our lives with the inevitability of weather, suddenly present and impossible to ignore. He appeared at Emma's preschool pickup, his sleek car drawing stares from other parents who'd never seen luxury like that in our neighborhood. He joined us for dinners at the small Italian place 2 blocks from my apartment, where the owner nearly fainted seeing Marcus Delano sitting at one of his scratch tables, and subsequently refused to let us pay for anything ever again. He was there for bedtime stories, his deep voice turning picture books into epic narratives that left Emma begging for just one more chapter. He was there for scraped knees and bad dreams, materializing with band-aids and patience I hadn't expected from a man who carried death at his ribs. And somewhere between the fabricated moments and the careful performances, the lines blurred. I'd moved out of my apartment 2 weeks in, not because he demanded it, but because he'd made it clear that protecting us properly meant consolidating location. The penthouse gained new life with Emma's presence. Toys scattered across previously pristine floors, children's drawings magnetized to the sub-zero refrigerator, the sound of laughter echoing off walls that had probably never heard it before. Marcus had an entire wing converted into Emma's space. Bedroom, playroom, even a small library filled with books he'd somehow known she'd love. When I'd protested the expense, he'd looked at me with those dark eyes and said simply, "She's mine now. I take care of what's mine." The possessiveness should have frightened me. Instead, it kindled something warm and dangerous in my chest. Mrs. Chen visited twice a week, paid handsomely for her time and company, though she would have come for free. She watched Marcus with shrewd eyes during those visits, catching moments when his hand lingered on my lower back, or when his gaze followed me across the room with an intensity that had nothing to do with pretense. "That man doesn't look at you like you're temporary," she'd said last week, her accented English blunt with age and wisdom. "He looks at you like he's already decided you're permanent." I'd laughed it off, but her words haunted me during quiet moments, when Marcus worked in his study and Emma slept, when I wandered the penthouse that was becoming home and tried to remember what my real life had looked like before him. The truth was, I was forgetting. The apartment with its water stains and broken locks felt like someone else's memory. The exhaustion of working double shifts, The constant calculation of whether I could afford both groceries and heat. It was fading, replaced by a reality where money wasn't a concern, and safety was guaranteed by men with guns stationed discreetly at every entrance. But Marco still hadn't been found, and the waiting was starting to fray my nerves. "We have a lead." Marcus spoke quietly, his voice cutting through the Saturday morning calm. Emma was at a playdate, her first one arranged through school, with the daughter of a family deemed safe after thorough background checks I tried not to think too hard about. We were alone in the penthouse for the first time in days, and the silence felt charged with everything we'd been carefully not discussing. I looked up from the book I'd been failing to read. "On Marco?" "Chicago." One of his former contacts reached out, trying to broker a deal. He stood at the windows, backlit by winter sunlight that turned his hair almost blue-black. "He wants to negotiate the return of the money in exchange for immunity." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What does that mean for us?" "It means this ends soon." He turned, and the expression on his face made my breath catch. "One way or another, Claire, Marco surfaces, we handle it, and then we go back to normal," I finished, the words tasting like ashes, like we agreed. "Is that still what you want?" He crossed the distance between us with that predatory grace I'd come to recognize, stopping close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "Normal? Your old apartment? Your old life? Pretending the last 3 weeks didn't happen? That was the deal." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You'd protect us until Marco was caught. Then we'd go our separate ways. Fuck the deal." The profanity startled me. He rarely cursed, especially around Emma. "You think I can just let you walk away now? After watching you curl up on my couch with a book every night? After listening to Emma call me Marcus like I'm someone who matters in her life? After—" He cut himself off, jaw tight, hands clenching and unclenching at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for me. "After what?" I whispered, standing on legs that felt unsteady. "After falling in love with both of you." The confession came out rough, raw, like it had been torn from somewhere deep inside him. I wasn't supposed to. This was supposed to be practical, convenient, a solution to a problem. But somewhere between playing pretend and actually living it, it stopped being fake, Claire. At least for me. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Marcus, you feel it too. Don't lie to me." He stepped closer, crowding my space in a way that should have felt threatening, but instead felt inevitable. "The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. The way you've stopped flinching when I touch you. The way you fit into my life like you were always meant to be here." "This isn't real," I protested weakly, even as my body betrayed me by swaying toward him. "We're playing house for Emma's benefit, for protection. This is the most real thing I've felt in years." His hands framed my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones with a gentleness that contradicted everything dangerous about him. "I know you're scared. I know I'm not what you imagined for yourself. But I'm what you have, Claire, and I'm asking you to choose to keep me." "You don't know what you're asking." Tears pricked my eyes, frustration and want and fear tangling into something impossible to name. "You're Marcus Delano. You live in a world of guns and threats and men who steal money and disappear. I'm just a waitress who made a mistake on a form. We're not— This doesn't—" He kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was possession and promise. And 3 weeks of tension finally breaking like a dam. His mouth claimed mine with the same certainty he approached everything else, and I melted into him like I'd been waiting for permission to stop fighting what I felt. When he finally pulled back, both of us breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "You're not just anything," he said fiercely. "You're the woman who walked into my world by accident and made me want things I'd given up on. You're the mother who'd do anything to protect her daughter, including making deals with dangerous men. You're mine, Claire. You have been since the moment you wrote my name on that form, whether you meant to or not. That's crazy." But I didn't pull away, didn't step back, didn't do any of the sensible things I should have done. Maybe. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "But you're not running, which tells me everything I need to know." He was right. I wasn't running. Because somewhere in the last 3 weeks, between the fabricated family dinners and the genuine laughter and the way he looked at Emma like she hung the moon, I'd stopped wanting to. The intercom buzzed, shattering the moment. Marcus pulled away with visible reluctance, pressing the button with more force than necessary. "What?" "Sir." The voice belonged to Vincent, his head of security, Marco's older brother, who'd proven his loyalty by being the one to uncover his siblings' theft in the first place. "We have a situation. The Chicago contact just went dark. And there's been activity at Miss Harper's old address." Every muscle in Marcus's body went taut. "What kind of activity?" "Someone tried to access the apartment." Building superintendent scared them off, but... A pause. Security footage shows a male matching Marco DeLuca's description. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Marcus's expression shifted from the man who'd just kissed me to something far more dangerous, all soft edges hardening into lethal focus. "Lockdown protocol. Now." He was already moving, pulling his phone from his pocket, his other hand going to the small of his back where I knew he kept a secondary weapon. "Get Emma back here immediately, full escort, and find out everything about this Chicago contact. Who he talked to, where he is, why he went silent." "Already on it, sir." The intercom cut off. Marcus made 3 calls in rapid succession, his voice clipped and commanding, arranging something I couldn't fully follow but understood was serious. When he finished, he turned back to me, and the contrast between the man who'd kissed me and the one standing before me now was stark. "Pack a bag for you and Emma, essentials only. We're leaving the city within the hour." "Leaving?" "Marcus, what?" "Marco's here, in New York. And if he tried to access your old apartment, he knows you're not there anymore, which means he's going to start looking." He gripped my shoulders, his intensity almost overwhelming. "I will not let him anywhere near you or Emma. Do you understand me? I will burn this entire city down before I let him touch either of you." The vehemence in his voice, the barely controlled violence lurking beneath his words, it should have terrified me. Instead, it made me feel safer than I'd ever felt in my life. Where are we going? Somewhere he can't follow, somewhere I control every variable. His hand cupped my cheek, the gesture achingly tender against the backdrop of danger. "Trust me, Claire. Please." I'd been trusting him for 3 weeks already. What was a little more? "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." The house upstate was less a house and more a fortress disguised as a rustic retreat. Set on 50 acres of private land, surrounded by forest and accessible only by a single road monitored by multiple security checkpoints, it represented safety in a way that felt both excessive and necessary. Emma loved it immediately. She raced through rooms filled with warm wood and stone fireplaces, discovering window seats and hidden nooks with the enthusiasm. The third night, after Emma had fallen asleep between us on the massive couch, we'd been watching a movie, the 3 of us tangled together like an actual family. Marcus carefully extracted himself and gestured for me to follow him to the study. They found him. He poured himself a drink with steady hands that I knew were only steady through practice. Marco, in a motel outside Albany. He'd been staying there for 2 days, probably working up the courage to try for Emma. My blood ran cold. "Try for her? You mean kidnapping, most likely. Either for ransom or leverage to negotiate his escape." Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless, but his knuckles were white around the glass. He knew taking Emma would force my hand, make me choose between the money and a child I'm publicly known to care about. Where is he now? Somewhere he'll never hurt anyone again. The finality in his tone told me everything I needed to know, and I should have felt horror at the implication, but instead felt only savage relief. "It's over?" I asked. "Really over?" "Yes." He set down his drink and closed the distance between us. "Marco is no longer a threat. The money has been recovered. There's no reason for you to stay under my protection anymore." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. "So, we go back to New York," I said slowly. "Back to normal. Like we agreed. Do we?" His hands found my waist, pulling me close enough to feel the heat of him. "Because I don't remember agreeing to let you go, Claire. I remember agreeing to protect you until the threat was eliminated. The threat is gone. But I'm still here. And unless I'm very wrong, you don't want to leave. He wasn't wrong. God help me, he wasn't wrong. Emma, I started, loves me. You know she does. And I love her. Not because I'm supposed to, not because of some arrangement, but because she's brave and funny, and asks me questions about the stars that I have to Google when she's not looking. His forehead touched mine, his breath warm against my lips. And I love her mother, the woman who wrote my name by accident and changed everything. This is insane, I whispered, but my arms were around his neck, my body pressed against his like it had been made to fit there, probably. His smile was soft, genuine, nothing like the dangerous man the world saw, but I've done insane things for worse reasons. Let me do this one for the best reason I've ever had, which is love. He kissed me softly, reverently, like I was something precious he'd been afraid to break. Stay with me, Claire. Not because you have to, not because it's safe, but because you want to. Because this family we've been pretending to be is the only real thing I've felt in my entire life. I thought about my old apartment, sitting empty now, full of memories of struggle and loneliness. I thought about Marcus's penthouse, how it had transformed from a showroom into a home with Emma's laughter and my books and our shared meals. I thought about the last 3 weeks, how seamlessly we'd fit into each other's lives despite coming from different worlds. And I thought about Emma, sleeping peacefully in the next room, dreaming whatever dreams 3-year-olds dream, safe and loved and surrounded by more than I could have ever given her alone. Okay, I said, the word barely a breath. Okay, yes. His kiss this time was different, deeper, claiming, full of promise and possession in equal measure. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with something that looked almost like vulnerability. I need you to understand what you're agreeing to, he said seriously. My life is complicated, dangerous. There will always be security, always be precautions. I can't promise normal, Claire. I can only promise that I'll spend every day protecting what's mine. We're not possessions. But I said it with a smile, because I understood what he meant. In Marcus's world, claiming ownership was the highest form of care. No, he agreed. You're everything. 6 months later, Emma called him Dad for the first time. Not Daddy. She'd always been particular about titles. But Dad, said casually while asking him to help with a puzzle, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Marcus had frozen, piece in hand, looking at her with an expression of such raw emotion that I'd had to leave the room to compose myself. When I'd returned, he'd been sitting on the floor with Emma in his lap, and there were tears on his cheeks he didn't bother hiding. The adoption papers were filed the next week. By the time they were finalized, we were married. A small ceremony with just Emma and a handful of Marcus's trusted associates, nothing like the society wedding he could have demanded. I'd worn a simple dress, Emma had scattered petals with gleeful abandon, and Marcus had looked at me like I was the answer to every question he'd never known to ask. We still lived in the penthouse, though Emma's wing had expanded and my books now filled an entire library. The old apartment had been sold, the money put into a trust fund for Emma's future. Her choice, her freedom, whenever she wanted it. But standing in our home, watching Marcus help our daughter with homework while dinner cooked and security monitored the building, and the life we'd built hummed along around us, I couldn't imagine her wanting anything different. I'd written his name by accident, a simple mistake, autocorrect and exhaustion, conspiring to change DeLuca to Delano, and that mistake had given me everything. Marcus looked up, catching me watching, and smiled. The soft, private smile he reserved only for us. Come here, he said, extending a hand. I went to him, fitting into the space at his side like I'd been designed for it, Emma between us chattering about fractions while Marcus's arm wrapped around my waist with casual possession. This was real. This was ours. This was the family we'd built from fiction and made solid through choice and love and stubborn determination to make impossible things work. And as Emma laughed at something Marcus said, as his hand tightened on my hip in that way that meant mine, I knew with absolute certainty that I would never regret the mistake that had brought us here. Some errors, it turned out, were the best decisions you'd never meant to make.